Hey guys, welcome to this video where I'm going to walk you through the basics of how to use a sewing machine, how a sewing machine works, how you can get it started and get it to do the most important things that you need to finish a simple sewing project. So this video is for complete beginners. We're gonna go through the absolute basics. So this is a great place to start if you are about to use a sewing machine for the first time and have no idea where to start. Let me introduce to you my two sewing machines. These are the sewing machines that I own and that I use for my sewing project here on my channel and in my private life as well. So this is my old trusty vintage sewing machine. It is from the 1960s. It's of a Polish make, a Loepsie. This thing is a beast. I absolutely love it. It never lets me down. It powers through every project. And then on the other side here is my newest sewing machine, which I only got a couple of months ago. This is the Brother Innovis A150. And this is a fancy computerized sewing machine that does all kinds of different things. The Loepsie here can only sew straight stitches forwards and backwards, whereas this does everything, all kinds of patterns, embroidery patterns, it does lettering. A lot of stuff is automated on this thing. So even though these two may look quite different, they are in fact very similar. The basic functions are very similar on both, and I feel like most sewing machines will be somewhere in between the two of these. I'm gonna focus mostly on this one during this tour because it's a little bit simpler and it just has the things that you need to have, and then I'll demonstrate what it looks like on a more modern machine, just in case yours looks a little bit more like this. Let me walk you through the features first. So every sewing machine will have a base, which is usually a little bit heavier to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere while you're sewing. Then it has a wheel on the side here. These both have that, a wheel that you can turn and that moves the needle, and turning this wheel will allow you to operate the machine manually. It's really handy if you want to do something very slowly or test something out, or if you just want to move your needle up or down for whatever reason. Each sewing machine will also have a little spot to hold your spool of thread. This one is vertical, this one is horizontal. Doesn't really matter much, just depends on the machine that you have. Then down here is your needle mechanism, and this is the most important part of your sewing machine and the part that you will have to deal with the most probably as you're sewing. Your mechanism here has a needle and a presser foot, and then on the bottom it has a feeder mechanism. So the mechanism on the bottom, when you turn your little manual wheel here, you'll notice that it starts to move. There are these little teeth on top that start to move, and that is what feeds your fabric through the machine. That feeder in combination with your presser foot makes sure that the fabric glides through the machine smoothly. There are many different types of presser feet, and I will get to that a little bit later. Every machine will also have a lever that allows you to lower and lift your presser foot. So you can lift it to slide your fabric under and then lower it so that the fabric is locked in the machine. The vintage machine here has the lever on the back. My modern machine has it on the side. Again, depends on the model and make of your machine. So something else that most machines will have is a way to choose your stitches. So I already mentioned my vintage machine only stitches in a straight line. It's very straightforward. So what I have here on this side of the front is just this one lever again that I can push up and down, which determines whether my fabric is fed through the machine forwards or backwards. And then I have a little wheel here which allows me to determine the stitch length. On my modern machine, as I mentioned, this is computerized, so this machine does everything automatically. And here I have a little computer panel where I can input the type, length, and just everything about the stitch that I'm looking for. It has some quick choice shortcuts in here, but again, it has all the features. So I just type in the number of the stitch that I'm looking for, adjust the length with the arrows, and I'm good to go there. Then this machine also has manual tension control. It is another little button that I have here. The thread is looped through the little tension adjuster, and I generally don't tend to touch this. The tension adjuster is good to use when your stitches are off, when there's something wrong. Sometimes when you sew with a sewing machine, you get these little loops either on the top or on the bottom of your stitching, and that is when you know you need to adjust the tension. How you need to adjust this can generally be found in the manual for the sewing machine, but if you're not getting any loops in the top or bottom of your stitches, then I wouldn't touch the tension machine, especially if you're inexperienced. My computerized sewing machine has automatic tension control. It does that for me, which is great as well. So we've seen the top thread here, the top spool. Every sewing machine also needs a bottom thread, and we call that a bobbin. So the vintage machine has a bobbin that comes in from the side. It's in a little casing like this, and then the bobbin itself is a little round spool of thread. Looks like this. Generally, when you buy thread, you will buy a large spool like this, and you will need to wind your bobbin thread manually. Machines give you an option or way to do that very quickly on the machine itself. So for my vintage machine, I have a little peg that I can just click my bobbin onto. Then I just direct the thread there, turn it on, the bobbin will wind. The computerized machine has a top-loading bobbin. Looks the same. And if I want to wind my bobbin, then here again it has on the top a little place where I can do that. Oh, this bobbin's not the right size. It's one that came already wound, but oh, I hope I can get it off now. Oh, I shouldn't have pushed that on. Let's pretend. So I put that on and then I just click this, and this thing again does it automatically. So how you insert your bobbin, again, that very much depends on your machine. For my computerized machine, it's very simple. I basically just drop the bobbin in and it does everything for me. On my vintage machine, the process is a little bit more extensive. So I need to put my bobbin in its casing, make sure that the thread comes out, then click the casing into the machine. So let's come a little bit more up close and I can show you how to thread both machines and also tell you a little bit more about the needles and presser feet. Let's start by threading the vintage machine. So as I mentioned, you're gonna want to put the spool on the designated spot. So mine is up here. Generally, you want the thread to come out from behind the spool. Threading is different on every machine and how to do it will always be written in the instruction manual, but usually it is around about the same. I'm just going to demonstrate so that you can get a little bit of an idea of what this looks like. On this vintage machine, the thread goes through this little thingy first. Then I pull it down and next it goes through my tension wheel. So it goes all the way around, it falls into this ridge down there, which is where the tension is adjusted with a little spring. And then it comes back up and then it goes into this arm right here and through it. And this is the part that moves when the sewing machine is running. So that is kind of the top of your needle mechanism. Then it goes down, it locks onto the machine itself here, then through a little spiral there, a second spiral right next to the needle, and then here it goes through the needle itself. Again, the direction in which it goes through the needle differs from machine to machine. On this machine, it goes from left to right. So it goes through the needle and then it goes into this ridge on my presser foot and out behind. That is the threading of the top of this machine done. So if I want my bottom thread to come out on the bottom, I will hold on to that top thread, turn the wheel, and then pull my top thread, and the bottom thread will come out as well. Then I have both of them, and I'm ready to start sewing. On the modern machine, this works a little bit differently. This one has the place for the spool up top here. So I'm just going to slide that on. And then since this is horizontal and prone to sliding off, of course, it has a little stopper. So I just slide that on with it. Then this machine has the procedure for threading written on it. So it's really simple to remember. You guide it through, lock it onto the machine here. Then it goes behind and underneath, and then around the arm again. You can kind of see it in there. The little silver bit is the same as the arm was on the other machine where it was exposed. Then it goes down. On this machine it goes behind the needle and then into the automatic threading mechanism, because this machine has something wonderful. It threads your needle automatically so that you don't have to do it by hand. So it just has this little thing on the side that I can push. The threading mechanism will come down and thread my needle for me. So all I have to do is then pull the thread through completely and again feed it under and behind my presser foot. So for the bottom thread on this one, just gonna go with this one. You wanna make sure that the spool is in the right direction, and then again, just guide it through all of these ridges. Snap it, and it pulls it up automatically as I start sewing. Now, as we are looking at this machine, I would like to talk a little bit more about the needle and the presser feet, because these things are interchangeable and it is quite important to pick the right one for your project in order to guarantee the best results and to not damage your sewing machine, because these sewing needles, they can and they do break, and it's not nice to have a broken needle mid-project, even though they are actually really easy to replace. So let me show you. This machine has a little knob here that I can just twist and it will release the needle. So this is what a machine sewing needle looks like. This is a ballpoint needle. It has a golden top. Ballpoint needles are used for stretch fabrics and stretchy materials. My last project was a swimsuit, so that is why this needle is currently on. By that flat side, you can usually determine which side needs to go into the sewing machine. So on my particular machine, the flat end of the needle needs to point backwards. So I just slide it in and then I lock it in by fastening it with this little thingy on the side. So as I mentioned, there are different types of needles for different projects. Which goes with which is very easy to look up. Onto the feet. This machine right here comes with a little bag full of different specialized presser feet. You won't need the majority of these for a simple beginner's project. Usually your universal foot is good enough. Let me actually take that off. This one comes off really easily off of this machine. Again, there's a little lever in the back that I can just press and it'll release the foot. This is my basic presser foot. It has the little ridge in the center right here that the thread can go through, and then it is fairly closed off so that it just feeds the fabric through nice and evenly. This one has a clear center, which is really nice if you have any markings on your fabric. Just makes it a little bit easier to see what you're doing. The one on my vintage machine, let me take that one off as well, looks a little bit different, but the principle is the same. They both have the same kind of basic characteristics. So this will probably be the foot that you use most often. It is by far the one that I use most often. I don't change mine that often, to be honest. This is a zigzag foot, and as you can see, it is a little bit wider than the standard universal foot. And the opening that the needle goes through is a little bit wider as well, because the needle needs to be able to move sideways, obviously, to do the zigzag stitches. Another type of foot you might come across is a zipper foot, which will look very similar to your basic foot, but only have one of these prongs. So the other side is kept open so that you can run it very close to a zipper. Obviously, the zipper teeth. I think this is the zipper foot on my modern machine, but I'm not sure, I haven't used it. I usually do zippers on my vintage machine, or by hand, if I'm completely honest. Another really important thing when sewing or on your sewing machine is, of course, the thing that makes it run. So my vintage machine comes with a pedal here, and the harder I press the pedal, the quicker my machine will sew. So this is the only way I can regulate the speed, but it is a very nice way. It's my preferred way of sewing, honestly, because you get a lot of control. The machine stops sewing as soon as you lift the pedal. So I actually really like using that. My modern machine has a button here, as you can see, a start button that will make it start running. I can adjust the speed with this little slider right here on the side to make it go slower and quicker, and if I wanted to stop sewing, I can just press this again. It also has a couple different buttons. This one This button will do a single back stitch. This button will make it stitch again to kind of lock the end of a stitch. This one will lift my needle, and this is a automatic thread cutter, which is actually really, really nice. I do miss that on my old machine. Here I have to cut all my threads by hand. This machine I can just press and it'll start sewing, which is especially handy when I'm doing embroidered stitches, decorative stitches, lettering, things like that. When I am just sewing a garment, I usually prefer to attach the pedal to that one as well, which then works the same as my vintage pedal, but this one just has options. I think that is everything I wanted to cover in this video. These are the absolute basics of sewing machine use, and with these you should be able to start experimenting with your machine, finding out what it can do, finding out which functions are more and less necessary to you and what you need to get started on your very first project. I personally feel like the best way to learn anything is to just dive in and start playing around, and that is definitely how I learned how to use both of my machines. Just started working with them. As long as you have these basics down, then you should be good to go and just play around a little bit. I will say though that sewing machines can be a little bit finicky. They can be divas a little bit, and they do definitely require maintenance. You can do maintenance yourself, make sure that they are dust-free, oiled, and just well taken care of, or you could take your sewing machine to someone who does sewing machine maintenance professionally. I know we have a couple stores here in town that do that, but improper maintenance can cause a lot of issues with your sewing machine that might be preventable, so that is definitely something to look out for, especially if you do want to use your sewing machine more frequently. But that is going to be it for this video, guys. I really hope you found this helpful and that you enjoyed watching. If you did, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for beauty, fashion, sewing and lifestyle content. If you would like to support me through Patreon or my merch store, there are links in the description box below. Thank you so much for your support. There is another video here that I think you might also enjoy. You can go watch next. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye!